Welcome to part 2 in my Kaplan GRE 500 word video series. And again, what's exciting about this list is that it features many words not seen on other lists. And that's why I really wanted to do a video series on it. Helpful for anyone wanting to learn English, as well as those, of course, doing the GRE. So starting with the word dogmatic, meaning dictatorial in one's opinions. So a dogma is a belief, and if you're dogmatic, you're fixed in your beliefs. You think you're right and everyone else is wrong. In that sense, you're dictatorial in your opinions. Dogmatic. Tawdry. You don't see that word very often in many other lists, so I like it. Tawdry means gaudy, cheap, or showy. So imagine a dress that costs like $5 and it's really tacky. You might describe that as tawdry. Really shiny, but very cheap and showy, not worth very much. Tawdry. Sully, great word. It's a name, but it also means to tarnish, to taint. Usually sullied the name of, meaning tainting or reducing the reputation of something. The name of the corporation was sullied by the recent scandal at headquarters. Just tarnished, given a bad mark. Scarred in a sense. Tarnished, tainted, sullied. Please don't sully my name with those accusations. Vernal. Related to spring, fresh. So spring is vernal, like the vernal equinox. But more generally, if something's fresh and new, you might say it's vernal, like spring. Vernal. Droll. Lovely word. Amusing in a wry, subtle way. So not a very obvious sense of humour, maybe a droll sense of humour. Doesn't make big laugh out loud jokes, makes funny witticisms that are very subtle and you don't laugh immediately, but then when you twig what they're saying, you laugh. That's a droll sense of humour. Amusing in a subtle way, a witty, wry way. Oh, stop being so droll. Stop being so funny in that subtle way, indirect way. Furtive. Secret, stealthy. Most often used in the phrase a furtive glance. Like you're not trying to be obvious, but you want to glance in that direction. So you give a furtive glance, a stealthy, secret glance, hoping you're not noticed. So most often used to do with looking at something, glancing at something. But you can be furtive in general. If you're walking down a corridor and you don't want to be heard, you're being furtive. You're trying to be stealthy and not make much noise. Circumspect. Cautious, aware of potential consequences. If you just quickly look at the etymology of the word, circum, like circumference, is around, like the circumference of a circle, and spect is to look, like a spectator. So someone who always looks around is cautious, a bit paranoid, aware of the potential consequences. You can also use it in a praising sense, like other people were reckless, he was more circumspect. He was more cautious, aware of what was going on. Circumspect. Malinger. To evade responsibility by pretending to be ill. A less common word these days, but to malinger is to basically fake illness. To be a malingerer, someone who's always faking illness, dodging work by pretending to be ill. Less likely to come up in your test just because it's more of a noun than a verb. Eloquent. Persuasive and moving, especially in speech. Much more common word, you probably know it already. If you speak well and you can persuade people easily in the way you speak, you are eloquent. Reticent. Silent, reserved. Not someone who's going to speak up too much. You keep your opinions to yourself. You are reticent. Audacious. Fearless and daring. Audacious is like the word bold, full of audacity, full of daring, adventurousness, and fearlessness. Audacious. Diatribe. Here's a unique word. An abusive, condemnatory speech. Like a rant or a jeremiad. A long speech where you're abusing something or someone. A diatribe. Sardonic. More common word. Cynical, scornfully mocking. often sarcastic. Those sardonic remarks are not helpful. They're just cynical, you're just mocking people basically, being too sarcastic. Sardonic. Assuage. To make something unpleasant less severe. Don't try to assuage my anger by handing me flowers. Or the pain was assuaged by some aspirin. Just reduce the intensity of something that's not very nice. Assuage. Desiccate. To dry out thoroughly. A desiccated landscape is like a desert, dried out thoroughly. Lampoon. There's a more unique one. To ridicule with satire. To take the piss, basically, out of something. To mock something. To lampoon it. To jeer and laugh at something silly or make it silly. Often politicians are lampooned in the media. Ridiculed. Surfeit. Nice word, many of you might not know. An excessive amount. Probably most of you know the word deficit, to not have enough of something. But did you know surfeit means having too much of something? Surfeit, opposite of deficit. Great word to know. Grievous. Causing grief or sorrow, serious and distressing. So there's a minor wound you could receive or a grievous wound, one that's really distressing, causing lasting damage to your body, causing grief or sorrow. Or a grievous event is one that's going to cause people to have grief, probably because someone died or something. Grievous. Frenetic, one of my favourite words. Frenetic, frantic, frenzied. Look at all those FR words. They all mean similar things. Full of fervour, passion, desperation almost, intense activity. Like a berserk Viking warrior. Frantic, frenzied, frenetic. All close synonyms, I say. Ingenuous. Showing innocence or childlike simplicity. This has come up in my previous videos, where the opposite is disingenuous, being dishonest, where ingenuous means being honest or innocent, like a child. Lapidary, there's something not in the other lists, relating to precious stones or the art of cutting them. There's a precious blue stone, I believe, out there called lapis lazuli, but I think that's how it's pronounced. But lapidary, either way, closely linked, relating to any precious stone or the art of cutting them. Obviously a much rarer word, but a much fancier one. But I'm not going to spend much time on this word because it wouldn't come up that often in a test, I don't think. Zeal, on the other hand, would, which means passion, excitement. Being a zealot is someone who's passionate about something, and that's their ideology, whereas to have zeal is just to have passion and excitement about something. Being zealous. Inexorable, wonderful word, hasn't come up in any other list. It means inflexible, unyielding, I would say inevitable. Like the word relentless or unstoppable. It basically means impossible to prevent. He was headed for inexorable victory. Essentially unstoppable, impossible to prevent. Closely linked fancy word would be ineluctable. It's definitely going to happen. You can't get in its way. I love that word. Let me just show you it again. Fairly hard to pronounce, but a great word to know. Unstoppable. Misanthrope. Bit more common. A person who dislikes others. Anthrope is human, which is where you get the word anthropology. So a misanthrope, someone who doesn't like humans, any other humans. Abyss. There's an original one for these kind of lists. An extremely deep hole, like a chasm that has no end. A bottomless pit, an abyss. Don't fall into the abyss of alcoholism because there's no bottom there. It will keep getting worse. That's how it's used, often in a metaphorical sense. Abyss. Pragmatic. Practical as opposed to idealistic. Focused on the down-to-earth details. Practical and pragmatic. Missive. Fancy? Slightly uncommon word. A written note or letter. He sent me many missives over the years. Many letters, many emails. Basically, if you want a fancy word for a letter or an email, say a missive. but you are being pretty fancy, I'll just warn you. Most people won't know that word. Nettle, there's a better word. To irritate. Why do you keep nettling her, irritating her, annoying her? A better word, or fancier word, I should say, for irritating or annoying someone. Nettling them, getting under their skin. Next word. Abstain. To choose not to do something. To be abstemious. To not indulge in things. To abstain from alcohol means to give up or renounce alcohol. Abstain. Sycophant. Lovely word. A self-serving flatterer, a yes man. Someone who just praises his boss, hoping for a promotion. Always saying, yes, oh, you're the best, you look amazing. That's a sycophant. A big insulting word. Next word. Lachrymose. Very nice, very fancy. Tearful. I don't know the etymology of this, but lachrymose means promoting tears, making you cry, or anything to do with the tear ducts. Tearful crying. A lachrymose event is one that makes you cry. Pastiche. Wonderful word. A piece of literature or music imitating other works. So pastiche is a praising word. You are celebrating what you are imitating. You're emulating. You have a favourite artist and you're copying their style, not because you're plagiarising, just because you want to celebrate how good that style is. It's a pastiche. Ford. Not just a car make, it's also to cross a body of water by wading. A ford in a river is a crossing where you can cross a river, but the verb to ford is to cross that body of water by wading through. Unusual word, good to know though. Contrite, even more common. Deeply sorrowful or repentant for a wrong. I did something wrong, but now I'm contrite. I'm repentant. I want your forgiveness for that. I am demonstrating contrition, regret, asking for forgiveness. Pulchritude. I used to use this word a lot when I was younger as a way of showing off my vocab. To describe someone as pulchritudinous is to say they are beautiful. Now obviously there are a lot easier ways of saying that. If you want to be really fancy, you can say that person has pulchritude or they are pulchritudinous. Beautiful. That is truly fancy. Enumerate. To count, list or itemize. To put into numbers basically. Can you enumerate your success? Can you tell me the numbers? Enumerate. Naive. Usually there's a couple of dots above the I because that's how it's originally done in the French. And again, if you're writing naive and you want to be fancy, put a couple of dots above the I. Either way, naive means lacking sophistication or experience, being a bit innocent or childlike, maybe a bit gullible, naive, showing naivete. A very French word there. Next one, juncture. A bit like the word junction, it's a point of time, especially where two things are joined. So at a junction, you can decide in a car which direction to go. Same thing with a juncture. It's where different things are joined. Maybe they're bones, maybe they're synapses, but more literally, we're talking about a point in time. So our relationship has reached a juncture where we have to decide which direction to go in, giving us a literal and metaphorical sense. The juncture of two mountains is where they cross over, or you could say the two companies reached a juncture in time where they decided to part their separate ways. Literal and metaphorical, juncture. Canard, a lie, a trick. A fancy way of saying a deceit. Don't try that canard on me. Almost like a magic trick that someone's attempting on you to fool you. Such a pathetic canard. Such a pathetic lie. Canard. A lot of French words today. And gregarious, a very common word that comes up in all of these lists. So hopefully you might recognize it already. Gregarious means outgoing, sociable, talkative. I think I've covered this word at 5 different times at least in my lists. But again, gregarious means outgoing, talkative, always being friendly and sociable. But there are many other words in this list that I've never seen before, which is why I like it. And even the words we have seen before, like gregarious, it's a good opportunity to practice what they mean. For example, winsome, very rare. Don't know if I've seen it before actually. Winsome is charming, happily engaging. I think I've seen it in one of my other vocab lists. Basically, to be winsome is to win someone over. Be persuasive, charming, friendly. A winsome smile might win you that contract. Winsome, charming, engaging. Vacillate. To physically sway or be indecisive. To vacillate between the options means you can't decide between the options. You're indecisive, you're fluctuating between the different options. Or of course, physically, that means you're actually swaying, but more often it's metaphorically. You just can't decide between the different options. You're vacillating. Itinerant. Wandering from place to place unsettled. You might have heard of the word itinerary. That's your plan, your journey plan from one place to another. Well, an itinerant is someone who just wanders from place to place, doesn't have a settled home, perhaps. Itinerant. Sacrosanct. Extremely sacred, beyond criticism. Often in a church or a mosque, there might be one room or chamber that's especially special, and you don't go in only on very special occasions. That would be a sacrosanct area. Extremely sacred, even more sacred than normal. Or more metaphorically, if someone has a belief that they really hold dear, you might say that belief is sacrosanct. Please don't attack it. Please don't invade it or challenge it. Sacrosanct. Diurnal. Well, you might know the word nocturnal means to do with the night. So can you guess what diurnal means? You probably guessed it. To do with the day. So if someone's habits are diurnal, they do them during the day. If they're nocturnal, they do them during the night. You often might use the word diurnal if you're talking about animals, whether they're awake during the day or the night. But diurnal means during the day. Taciturn, much more common word. Silent, not talkative. A bit like that other word we saw today, reticent. Not voicing their opinions easily or often. Reticent or taciturn. Endemic. Well, we've all had an opportunity to learn this word during Corona. Pandemic means spreading everywhere, pan, everywhere, whereas endemic means particular to one place. So their definition is belonging to a particular area, inherent. So if a disease is endemic to one country, it means it's limited to that one country. If it's a pandemic, it goes everywhere. That's the difference. Toady. I think that's a unique word to this list. One who flatters in the hope of gaining favours. A bit like that word sycophant, but maybe a sycophant is slightly more skilled at being a flatterer, and they use more mellifluous words, more fancy words. Whereas a toady, you're taking the piss even more. You're saying they try to flatter other people to gain an advantage, but they're not even that good at doing that. They're just a toady. Next word, neologism. Well, etymology is helpful here. It's a new word or expression. Neo means new. Logos means word. So a neologism is a new word or expression. One that you've coined yourself. You've invented yourself. And finally for this video, supplant. To replace another by force, to take the place off. So the CEO was supplanted by the young upstart who replaced him in a vicious maneuver. Essentially to take someone's position or role, often by force or coercion. To supersede someone, essentially. Take over where they left off. To make them slightly more obsolete. Either way, I hope you learn at least one word here or confirmed your understanding of dozens of words. Have a wonderful day.